Hello and welcome back to the September Sim. My name is Laura and today I have a special speed build for you just in time for the Halloween season. This is a vampire castle built in the style of a French chateau with a vineyard for them to make plasma nectar. Stay until the end for a full walkthrough of the build inside and out, or I've added the timestamps below. So get comfy, grab yourself something pumpkin spiced and let's get into it. It's the most wonderful time of the year, guys, which means I get to build something spooky. This is built on the 50 by 50 lot in Ravenwood, which I thought would be great for the storyline I had in mind for this. For the facade, it is inspired by these French chateau images and this dollhouse, which I think is amazing. I wanted it to be really decadent and almost like a castle. And for the interior, I tried to match the same style as this on the inside. I think with Get Famous, we got quite a lot of French-inspired build and buy items, which I've never actually used before, and I've been wanting to build a French chateau for a while. So this was the perfect excuse to use those items and sort of build something that had a little bit more of a French countryside inspired vibe to it. With that in mind, I originally wanted to build this in Windenburg, in the parts where the Von Haunted Estate is, because I feel like that was what the developers initially intended that sort of area to be, very much like the French countryside. And my original idea for this build was to make it derelict and sort of run down, and it would be sort of a gameplay challenge where your sim would inherit it and have to do it up. But the more I tried to do that, the less I kind of vibed with that build. And instead I wanted to turn it into something that was a different kind of gameplay inspired, one that could be for the life forms we already have in the game, which is vampires. And I owe this all down to just finishing the game Cabernet and also the wine puzzle that's in Resident Evil Village, which both draw upon the idea of a vampire consuming wine infused with blood. I'd recommend both of these games if you're looking for something gothic inspired to play for Halloween, although one is very different to the other. Obviously Resident Evil Village is a lot less chill, but Cabernet's just got a really nice little storyline that took a few twists and turns that I wasn't expecting. And just like the colour palette and the voice acting was really good in that game as well. So if you're looking for something that isn't too long and just you want to get a bit of a gothic vibe, I would recommend that. So in order to make this build function in that kind of way, there are a couple of planters in the garden which the plasma fruit can grow out of. And then in the subterranean level, this houses the wine and the wine making facilities, or nectar making facilities, should I say. So it's fully functional to make as a home business for your vampire sims to use in that way. There's also a small little room in the basement as well that could be used for willing participants or willing sims to donate their own plasma. So onto the actual building of this. So you can see here I'm doing the roofing, which is a definite challenge for me in this type of build. It's not something I've done before, and as you can see from the images that I shared previously, for French chateaus, they are very tall roofs with a lot of turrets and a lot of pointy details within them, which was quite difficult for me to bend the game to that will in a way. So you see here the top floor is making a lot of separate moving parts so that the build remains functional, because a lot of the time there is a lot of roof clipping issues in this game. So if you are building a roof that is taller than the wall height you have for that room, it will clip through when you go to play on that story. I didn't want that to happen, so I wanted the third floor to be as playable as possible when you have all the walls down or half walls down. So that's why there's lots of moving parts within this roof here. And I'm just fiddling around with it here to make it look and line up in the best way that it can, while still remaining aesthetically pleasing. I also found that there was a couple of bugs when I was playtesting this, that if you have the eaves of the roof hanging down lower than the wall height, it creates an invisible wall for the sims and they couldn't walk through. And when I was playtesting this, my sim just couldn't enter one of the rooms on the top floor until I figured out it was to do with the eaves, which makes no sense because that's on the outside of the house, but we figured it out and I corrected it before uploading it to the gallery. So the sims can enter any room now, so that's not a problem. In regards to the packs used for this one, it's mainly using Life and Death, Horse Ranch, and the Riviera Retreat kit. The brick wall facade on this is using Riviera Retreat because I think it's quite a nice soft brick, because I think a lot of the brick we have in the game is a little bit too harsh for the kind of vibe I was looking for here. I also use a lot of debug objects here to place around the build, so that's using lots of the gates from vampires and then lots of the little stonework pieces we got from Life and Death, which are absolute hero pieces. I've used them in pretty much every build since that pack's come out. But I also love all the roof details, and I just think the colouring and the aesthetics of this pack really matched the vibe of this build well. I've also used some of the wall details from Business and Hobbies because I thought the little romantic, I forget what they're called, like the little plaster details underneath the windows I thought were really, really sweet and really nice for this type of build. And then they give it a bit more of a luxurious feel. With the terrain, I've created a stepped incline up to the house because I wanted the house to be really foreboding and kind of on a hill and look really like, sinister's not the quite right word, but if you saw it from the edge of the street, you definitely realise that vampires were living there. So to have it up on a hill would help with this, I think. And then I added in the vineyard debug grape plants from Horse Ranch to line up the entrance of the house, so as people are walking up to the house that they can be surrounded by all those plants that obviously aren't the true cause of the wine in this house, but they make a nice facade and also just a nice misdirection for the human sims that don't realise what's going on. So I guess that's enough from me right now. As always, the build is linked in the description below if you'd like to download the tray files, or it's up on my gallery. Gallery ID is TheSeptemberSim. Make sure you search by EAID, not hashtag, when searching for me in the gallery. And as mentioned in the intro, if you'd like to see the full build tour inside and out, I've popped the timestamps below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a happy Halloween. Bye. bye.